You are standing in a supermarket right now, or you will be soon. You'll walk down an aisle, pick up something in a package, and have absolutely no idea what's in it, where it came from, or whether it would kill you if you ate it raw. And that's completely normal. That's just Tuesday. But 10,000 years ago, a human being who couldn't answer those questions was a dead human being. The skills your ancestors carried in their bodies and minds every single day, skills so sharp they could mean the difference between living and dying before sunrise, are almost entirely gone from you. Not because you're weaker, not because you're less intelligent, but because something happened to the human species that had never happened before. And you're living in the aftermath of it right now. Your ancestors didn't go to school to learn how to survive. There were no textbooks, no instructors, no certification courses in fire starting or animal tracking. The knowledge lived in the body. It was practiced daily, passed down through direct demonstration, embedded in ritual, story, and necessity. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has spent decades studying the relationship between early humans and their environment. And one of his central arguments is that the human brain itself, its size, its complexity, was shaped by the demands of surviving in a world that was actively trying to kill you. Your brain is, in a very real sense, a survival organ. And for most of human history, it was kept extremely busy. So what did you lose? And what does it mean that you lost it? Start with navigation. Not the kind where you type an address into your phone. The kind where you walk into a forest with no landmarks you recognize, no compass, no map, and you find your way home. Ancient humans did this constantly. They moved across enormous distances, remembered terrain from a single pass through it, and built internal maps of landscapes that stretched for hundreds of miles. Researchers studying the Twi people of Namibia found that individuals could navigate accurately across featureless desert terrain spanning thousands of square kilometers, using nothing but memory, celestial cues, and a relationship with the land so intimate it's difficult to translate into modern language. They didn't just know where they were. They knew the land the way you know your own kitchen in the dark. Your brain still has the hardware for this. The hippocampus, the region responsible for spatial memory, is ancient. It evolved long before language, long before agriculture, long before cities. But like any skill, it atrophies without use. A famous study by Eleanor Maguire at University College London found that London taxi drivers, who must memorize the entire layout of the city before they can get their license, had measurably larger hippocampal regions than non-drivers. The brain grew to meet the demand. Now imagine what your hippocampus looked like when every single day required you to navigate, to track, to remember. Now imagine what it looks like today, when your phone tells you to turn right in 400 meters. Navigation was just the beginning. Your ancestors could read weather, not in the abstract weather app way, in the intimate, physical, bone-deep way. They could smell rain coming. They could read cloud formations with the precision of a meteorologist. They knew wind direction at dawn predicted conditions by midday. They tracked how animal behavior shifted before a storm. They watched the behavior of insects. Ethnobotanist Wade Davis, who has spent years living with indigenous communities across the Americas, describes this kind of environmental reading as a form of attention so total and so trained that it constitutes almost a different mode of consciousness. The world was a text, and your ancestors were fluent in it. You have almost certainly lost the ability to read that text. You live indoors. Your food comes from elsewhere, and the weather is something that happens to your commute, not something that decides whether you eat. Think about fire. You might be able to start one with a lighter, maybe with matches, but could you start one with friction? Could you look at a landscape and identify which specific dry grasses, which particular wood species, which combination of materials would give you the ember you needed? Ancient humans carried this knowledge not as trivia, but as a core life skill. Experimental archaeologist Lynn Kelly has documented how this kind of knowledge was encoded in ancient memory systems. Elaborate spatial and rhythmic structures that preserved thousands of details about which plants do what, which materials behave in which ways, in what season, in what conditions. They didn't write it down. They built it into songs and stories and landscapes of the mind that could hold more information than you might imagine. And when that chain of transmission was broken, when the people who carried it died or were displaced or were told their knowledge was worthless, it was gone. You cannot look at a plant and know whether it will feed you or kill you. Your ancestors could. Not every individual knew every plant. That would be impossible. But within any given community, someone did. And often several people did. Ethnobotanists studying surviving hunter-gatherer communities have cataloged the plant knowledge held by individuals in these groups. Hundreds of species, their uses, their preparation methods, their seasonal variations, their lookalikes, and their deadly cousins. One study among the Chimane people of Bolivia found that adult foragers could identify and accurately describe the properties of over 300 wild plant species. That knowledge took a lifetime to build, and it lived nowhere but in human memory. You also lost the ability to listen, not to music, to silence. Ancient humans spent enormous amounts of time in states of attention that are almost impossible to recreate in the modern world. Sitting still, watching, listening for the sound that didn't fit, the branch that broke wrong, the bird that went quiet too suddenly, the breathing that didn't belong. Predators were real. They were close. The human nervous system was calibrated to catch tiny signals in a sea of noise. Psychologist Robin Dunbar has written extensively about how the social brain of early humans was tuned not only for interpersonal relationships, but for reading environmental signals with a sensitivity that modern life has almost entirely switched off. When nothing in your environment is trying to eat you, you stop listening for it. But the cost of that is a form of attentiveness, a quality of presence that your ancestors possessed and that you almost certainly don't. There's something even stranger underneath all of this. Your ancestors knew how to be bored without suffering. They knew how to sit with nothing for hours, not meditating, not doing some structured mindfulness exercise, but simply existing in the world, in a body, with attention spread wide and low across an environment. That was the default state of human consciousness for most of human history. And it is now so uncomfortable for the modern brain that billions of people will reach for their phone within 90 seconds of having nothing to do. Researcher Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia ran a series of experiments where participants were asked to sit alone in a room with nothing but their thoughts for 15 minutes. A significant portion of them chose to give themselves mild electric shocks rather than sit with nothing. That is how far you have traveled from the mind your ancestors carried. And here is the part that makes this strange and a little heartbreaking. You didn't choose any of this. The agricultural revolution, the shift from nomadic foraging to settled farming, began around 10,000 years ago in several places almost simultaneously. It changed everything. It changed your diet, your posture, your teeth, your gut bacteria, your sleep patterns, your relationship with time, your social structures, and your skills. For many things, the trade was worth it. Civilization, writing, medicine, technology, the benefits are real. But the trade also meant that the knowledge which had been accumulating in the human body and mind for hundreds of thousands of years began to leak away. Slowly at first, then faster. Then so fast that within a few generations, entire categories of knowing simply ceased to exist. The tracker who could read the story of a morning in a single footprint. The healer who knew which bark, which root, which combination of preparation could reduce fever, stop bleeding, ease pain. The navigator who could cross open ocean using only the color of the water and the behavior of birds. These weren't primitive people with limited minds. They were people with extraordinary minds, trained and honed by daily contact with a world that demanded everything from them. The fossil record shows that the brains of hunter-gatherers were, on average, larger than the brains of the early farmers who came after them. Read that again. The transition to agriculture, which we tend to think of as an upgrade, was accompanied by a measurable decrease in average brain size. Not because farming made people stupider, but because the cognitive demands shifted, and the skills that were no longer needed began to fade. You are the end result of that process. Brilliant in ways your ancestors couldn't imagine. Capable of things that would seem like magic to a person from 15,000 years ago. But also missing something. A set of capacities so deep they're not even skills anymore. They're something closer to a relationship with the world. A fluency. A presence. And the strange thing is that your body still remembers the shape of it. When you go camping and start a fire with your own hands, something eases in you. When you walk for a long time in silence through a forest, something old wakes up. When you grow something, eat something you found, navigate somewhere without help, there is a feeling that doesn't quite have a name in modern language, but your ancestors would have recognized it immediately. It's the feeling of a brain doing what it was built to do. You lost the skills, but you didn't lose the longing for them. And that longing, that particular ache that comes from being somewhere in nature, alone, without a screen, not quite sure what to do, that is 10,000 years of forgetting trying to remember itself. Tonight, when you check your phone for the weather, that's not just convenience. That's the last trace of something ancient, reaching for information the way it always has. The world just looks different now than the one it was built for.